What is a guitar player's most important body part? If you answered hands, you're wrong. The correct answer is the mind, and I'm gonna prove that today because I'm gonna share with you a list of 10 stellar guitar players who use their mind to overcome physical limitations involving their hands. The list that I'm about to share with you contains some incredible musicians whom I have great respect for. I have great respect for the music that they made or continue to make, but I also have great respect for the fact that they never let their physical limitations define them or seemingly get in their way. Each of these musicians had this inner fire, this inner passion to create music and share it with others, and I'm so glad that they did. In fact, I hope this list provides inspiration for you, and with that being said, let's go ahead and dig right in. Kicking off this list is none other than Django Reinhardt. Django Reinhardt seemingly defined an entire genre of music, gypsy jazz. Now, some of you might be familiar with Django Reinhardt, some of you might not know him at all, but he has an incredible story, and here it is. Django suffered extensive burns over half his body in a fire that happened on November 2nd, 1928. His ring and pinky finger on his left hand were badly burned. Doctors believed that he would never play guitar again. Reinhardt applied himself intensely to relearning his craft. While he never regained the use of those two fingers, Reinhardt regained his musical mastery by focusing on his left index and middle fingers, using the two injured fingers only for chord work. Yes, he defined an entire genre of music with only two fretting fingers. And to see him play, I think is, well, a pretty amazing feat. So let's go ahead and do that. Here's the tune, Jacaranda Swing. All right, the next artist on our list is Phil Keaggy. For those of you who don't know Phil, he's an incredible fingerstyle musician and one that is seemingly just makes magic whenever a guitar is in his hands, but he too has quite the amazing story. Here it is. Keaggy is missing half of the middle finger on his right hand due to an accident at age 4. And here's the story as told by Phil himself. We lived on a farm in Hubbard, Ohio, which had a big water pump, and I was climbing up on it. As I was kneeling on top of the platform, it broke and the faucets came crashing down on my finger and cut it off. I can remember it very vividly, as if it happened yesterday, and I can see my dad running down the hill, rescuing me and taking me to the hospital. I can recall having a white cast and bandage. It was gigantic. They tried to sew it on, but it didn't take, so I grew up with 9 fingers. As a young kid, I was embarrassed about it a lot, especially when I was beginning to get into guitar. And that's the very thing that I think is amazing with this story, is that despite this injury, he still had this calling to guitar, and I'm so glad that he followed that calling, because Phil is really a tasty guitar player. In fact, here he is playing the song County Down. As a guitar geek, I can't help but notice, well, first of all, Phil's amazing performance, but also that stellar Olsen guitar sounding so good, and I believe it has a Sunrise pickup as well. A certain guitar geek combination at that. All right, let's move on down the list. Now, this next artist shares a last name with an artist whom I'm very fond of. This next artist's name is Wesley Tuttle. Now, I don't believe he is related to Molly Tuttle, but he has a pretty phenomenal story as well. Wesley was raised in California and took up music at age 4, but had to relearn to play the guitar and ukulele after losing all but the thumb and one finger on his left hand. He also contributed the yodeling to the Silly Song in Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and later backed country great Tex Ritter on guitar. Now, if you've never heard of Wesley Tuttle, don't worry, you're not alone. I hadn't either. So that being the case, let's go ahead and listen to a song by Wesley entitled Yodeling Blues.
If you're feeling blue, days go wrong. yodeling boogie. You're bound to lose, so slow down boogie blues. Yodeling boogie, yodeling boogie, yodeling boogie. Come on, let's go.
All right, this list is shaping up pretty solidly so far, and if you want to learn any more about each of these artists or take in these performances in their entirety, please visit acousticlife.tv/AT145. All right, this week on Acoustic Tuesday, I've already started down the list of musicians who overcame physical limitations to make beautiful music. Later on in today's show, we're going to continue down that list, and I think you'll be amazed at some of the guitar players I'm featuring, but maybe even more so amazed at their stories.
Today is filled with love. Today is like no other day before. You and I will never be the same.
Welcome to Acoustic Tuesday, episode number 145. This is the show where you're going to learn about acoustic guitar gear, discover acoustic artists, and get inspired to live your very best and boldest acoustic life. As with all episodes of Acoustic Tuesday, I'm going to share with you my Guitar Geek list for the week, but prior to doing so, I have to ask you an acoustic-infused Guitar Geek trivia question. And since we're talking about guitar players who have overcome physical limitations, I figured our Guitar Geek trivia question should follow along the same lines. So here it is. Which of the following guitarists had to overcome damage sustained to their hands or fingers? Was it A, Jim Croce, B, Les Paul, C, Tony Iommi, or D, Bruce Langhorne? Go ahead and ponder that question, and at the end of the show, I'll be sure to give you the answer. All right, I figured we should just dive right back into our list of inspirational guitarists, and the next guitarist I want to feature is Billy Joe Shaver, phenomenal singer-songwriter, a country great, and one who has a ton of entertaining stories. Billy Joe has a story himself. He took a job at a lumber mill to make ends meet. One day his right hand, his picking hand, became caught in the machinery and he lost the better part of 2 fingers and contracted a serious infection. He eventually recovered and taught himself to play the guitar without those missing fingers. Now, I can't feature a song by Billy Joe just because of copyright issues, but I want to encourage you to visit acousticlife.tv/AT145. I've selected a rendition, a performance of Billy Joe playing Honky Tonk Heroes where you can actually see his picking hand in full detail, and he really doesn't skip a beat. He just plays on, and I'm so glad that he stuck with the guitar despite that injury. Moving on down our list, the next player is one that I wasn't familiar with until I was doing research for this show. Our next player is self-proclaimed the fingerless fiddler. Yes, I'm talking about Roy Thackerson. Roy started playing the guitar at age 5 and was actually learning to do chords. But at age 6, like all young boys, curiosity got the best of him one afternoon when he found what he thought was a firecracker. Now, rather than me try and explain the story, I'd rather have Roy explain it to you because it's quite amazing. So, take it away, Roy.
We lived across the street from Catholic Church over there in Cisco, still there, Avenue F, 1107 Avenue F. That's where I got a hold of the dynamite cap. But I took that dynamite cap out in the alley. The old kitchen match was laying out there in the back alley. That's where I struck the match, stuck it down in that dynamite cap. My little brother was behind me, Bert, and my niece Nancy was standing to my right. She got a couple of pieces of the shrapnel. I think one on her neck, maybe one in her leg. And of course it blew me back over the little brother. And of course he was covered, just covered in blood. But I never heard the explosion. There was the concussion knocked me out before I ever heard it. Cisco had a man named Dr. Brown, and that's where they sewed the fingers up, and of course the shrapnel or off of the shell is what put the eye out.
A pretty wowing story, to say the least. Now, with great determination and dedication, and of course the love of music, Roy overcame what some would call a handicap. And at age 25, Roy decided that he wanted to play the fiddle. And he did so. In fact, he made a contraption that would allow him to do that very thing. But he also used that same determination to play the dobro, the mandolin, the piano, and even guitar. In fact, I've got some footage of him playing guitar that is just so cool to see. In fact, here is Roy playing Beat Boogie on the guitar. All right, next up on our list is a guitarist that I'm sure all of you have heard of at some point or another. If you haven't, don't worry, it's okay. I'm here to share with you none other than Jerry Garcia, most commonly associated with the Grateful Dead, but Jerry was also a phenomenal folk music player. In fact, I believe he played banjo in a jug band prior to joining and creating the Grateful Dead. But nonetheless, in 1946, 2/3 of Jerry Garcia's right middle finger was cut off by his brother in a wood splitting accident while their family was on vacation in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Garcia later confided that he often used this to his advantage in his youth, showing it off to other children in his neighborhood. And I have to say, here's another guitar player that really never skipped a beat. He went on playing banjo, he went on playing pedal steel, he went on playing the guitar for many, many years despite this injury. Now, again, because of copyright, I can't feature a performance by Jerry and the Grateful Dead, but I've selected an amazing one for you to watch at acousticlife.tv/AT145. In fact, it's an acoustic version of Deep Ellum Blues with the whole band, and man, it's really tasty. You gotta check that out. So make sure to visit acousticlife.tv/AT145 to see that. All right. Before we get into some show comments, I wanted to share with you one more artist, a banjo player at that, because I figured, cool connection here. Jerry Garcia was a banjo player, and this next artist, Barry Abernathy, is a banjo player as well, and he does so despite a pretty severe limitation on his fretting hand. Barry Abernathy was born with only a thumb and part of an index finger on his left hand. Because of his hand, he approaches the fingerboard from the top and does all of his fretting with his thumb and the end of his one-knuckled index finger. Now, a pretty stunning story at that, but if you just listen to Barry play, you'd never suspect that he has any limitations whatsoever. A phenomenal musician, and here's a quick banjo break that he was playing when he played with the band Mountain Heart. Here it is. Barry's a phenomenal player at that. Now he, as I mentioned, plays with Mountain Heart, but he also more recently plays with the band Appalachian Roadshow. And on top of his great banjo playing, he's a great vocalist as well, and certainly a player that you need to be aware of. All right, well, let's hop in our time machine here real quick and go back to episode 143, where we talked about 5 blues guitars that were under $230. I want to dig into some comments from that show because, well, like all episodes of the Acoustic Tuesday show, the audience is fantastic. Yes, I'm talking about you. You guys create such amazing conversation and just leave such great and helpful comments. I wanted to feature a few of those. Our first one comes from Thomas Nowicki. And he says this: "Great show as usual, Tony. I have another blues guitar suggestion. Back when I was a kid, the first guitar I ever had was a Stella Harmony. The local music store sold them like hotcakes as a beginner/student guitar. They were well made and cheap even then. They had a spruce top with a birch back and sides. They were small with a great barky, boxy tone. You can still get a decent vintage one for about $200 nowadays. I wish I still had it. But a Stella Harmony will probably be my next Guitarsenal purchase. And this is a great observation and recommendation by Thomas, because some of those old Stella Harmonies you can still get, as he mentioned, at a really killer price, and they have great blues tone. Our next comment is a short but sweet comment from Mr. Schwab, and he says this: I think you didn't mention her last video. So glad you didn't forget to mention Molly Tuttle. Well, I've got a great announcement coming up here soon, but I'll get to that later. It may or may not involve the next show. It may or may not involve Molly Tuttle, and it may or may not involve a very recent development that I've just discovered in conversing with Molly Tuttle. I'll get to that later. Make sure to stay tuned. Our next comment comes in the form of a twofer. In fact, as I was sifting through the comments of the last Acoustic Tuesday episode, I was actually noted that there were two different comments left by two different people recommending the same blues guitar. So this definitely caught my attention. The first comment comes from Yellow Ledbetter, maybe a Pearl Jam fan, I don't know. And he says this: thank you for that show, Tony, great job. I would like to throw in the Harley Benton CLP-15ME from Tommen. I own this guitar as a lefty, and it is my little slide devil. It has this boxy, dirty sound. I love it for playing blues and also for some folk. The body and the neck are made of mahogany. It also comes with a bone nut and bridge insert. Here in Germany, it's about 219 euros. Now, Donnie Pierce, another guitar geek who watches the show, said this: Hi Tony, so far I have watched the Acoustic Uprising and the Greenfield guitar documentary. I like both a lot. Thinking about going to the fingerpicking workshop in Austria one of these years. I just ordered a budget guitar that I think meets the criteria. It's a Harley Benton custom line CLP-15ME LHVS. I'm a lefty and was happy to find this one for $229 from Tommen Music. Solid mahogany top, slotted headstock, triple O body style with bone nut and compensated bone saddle. Not sure what kind of bridge pins, but I'll play around with some options. Oh, and it also comes with a Fishman Precis 2 preamp system with integrated tuner. Love the show, keep up the great content. I love seeing guitar geeks on the same wavelength here. Pretty awesome that those recommendations came in, and make sure to add that to your blues guitars on a budget list. All right, the next comment comes from a great screen name, Boofy Half-Pint, and they say, thanks for the rundown on the budget price guitars and how to tweak the sound of those guitars. I would add more, but I kept getting distracted by the lovely maroon and cream guitar behind you. Can I ask what it is, please? Thanks. Yes, indeed. The cream guitar, or there's actually two guitars behind me. One's a Sunburst with Ivoroid binding. The other is a cream guitar. The cream guitar is a national guitar that has been labeled, I believe it's a Supro label, and it's a collegiate guitar, kind of a thinner gauged steel body guitar with a resonator, single cone resonator, real barky, real bluesy. The other guitar behind me is a Beard Vintage R square neck, which was my first kind of real pro dobro, and a guitar that I have fond memories and a fond relationship with. Now, special note, you all have asked me about my Guitarsenal quite frequently, and we just put on the production schedule some Guitarsenal features where I'll be breaking my Guitarsenal into little digestible pieces and sharing with you the stories behind each guitar. So I'm super excited for that. So stay tuned to some upcoming Acoustic Tuesday episodes. I'll be featuring that, and kind of as a renewed campaign to reinvigorate the Guitarsenal t-shirt, which is available, of course, at acoustictuesday.store. All right, and our final comment is again a short and sweet one, and it comes from the folks at Recording King. And they simply say, thanks for the props, Tony. Well, thank you, Recording King, for making such really killer, budget-friendly blues guitars. And just on that note, I want to thank everybody for leaving their comments on the Acoustic Tuesday show. It's so nice to hear from you all, and I certainly appreciate the conversation and the helpful hints and tips you all leave. Now, speaking of the Acoustic Tuesday viewing audience, one of the things that's become kind of a tradition on the Acoustic Tuesday show is celebrating guitar gratitude. You know, celebrating that feeling of gratitude we have for the things that the guitar has brought into our life, or the realizations that the guitar has helped us make. And here is Rick Murchison from Alabama, and he has some stellar guitar gratitude that I want to make a special statement on here in a moment, but let's listen to Rick first.
Hi, Tony. This is Rick Murchison coming to you from down in Lower Alabama. I'd like to share a guitar gratitude story with you. several years ago, as my mother was into her 80s, she got dementia pretty bad. And she would get to the point where she would say, I don't know who I am or what I am or where I am or why I am. And she was very worried about losing herself. Well, if I would break out the guitar and start singing some of the old family songs that had come down for generations from England and Scotland, some Sunday school songs and some ditties she taught us when we were kids, or even some Hank Williams, she would sing along and remember every word and the tune. And you could see the worry just falling off of her and the joy welling up in her. And that's my guitar gratitude story.
I want to thank Rick so much for sharing that guitar gratitude, and I'm just so thankful that he did. You know, we always talk about music as this incredible healing power, and there it is, case in point. You know, and I think today's episode really kind of focuses on music as a healing power, music as a driving force, really. You know, here we have a list of musicians that, despite hurdles that have entered their life, they're like, screw it, I'm making music anyway. At all costs, I'm making music because I have to do it. And I think music is that powerful. And as Rick mentioned in his guitar gratitude, it has this amazing magical quality that really brings people to life and really kind of helps us, become grounded in a way. So again, thanks so much, Rick, for sharing that. And also stellar shirt, Rick. I should say that Acoustic Tuesday for Vets shirt suits you quite nicely. All right, let's move on down the line. I want to wrap up our list here. I've got 3 more guitarists that I want to share with you. Guitarists, again, that have overcome some physical limitations, but I've saved these last 3 because, well, there's some exceptions. I created a rule and I said, I'm gonna feature guitarists, and then I featured Jerry Garcia, and he's a guitarist, but he's also a banjo player. Then I went into a straight ahead banjo player, Barry Abernathy of Mountain Heart and Appalachian Roadshow. And now I'm looking at this list and I'm thinking, okay, there's only one acoustic guitarist on this list. I've got a piano player and I've got an electric guitar player, but they have such amazing stories. They needed to be on the list. So let me just jump in and share these guitarists, well, these musicians with you. Mac Rebennack is our next guitar player, and Mac might look familiar, and he has an interesting story. So let me tell you his story, and then we'll go into, well, who Mac actually is. Mac Rebennack's career as a guitarist was stunted around 1960, when the ring finger on his guitar fretting hand, was injured by a gunshot during an incident at a Jacksonville, Florida gig. After the injury, Rebennack concentrated on bass guitar before making piano his main instrument, developing a style influenced by Professor Longhair. Now, before I reveal who you probably know Mac as, let's actually listen to him play guitar. This was a cut from 1959 on a studio session, and here is Mac. Now you might be thinking, hey, this Mac guy, he does look familiar. Well, Mac Rebennack is actually Dr. John, yes. Dr. John had his ring finger on his guitar fretting hand shot off and then later dove into piano, and I'm so thankful that he did because I think of Dr. John as one of the most amazing bottom line musicians that is out there. So there you have it. Mac Rebennack is Dr. John. Dr. John is Mac Rebennack. Let's keep going down the line. Our next guitarist is one with, wow, what a story here. This next guitarist, well, I'll just go ahead and reveal who he is. Hound Dog Taylor is the next guitarist. Now, he has an interesting story because he wasn't necessarily missing a finger. He had an extra finger on each hand. He was famous among guitar players for having 6 fingers on both hands, a condition called polydactyly. I think I'm saying that right. As is usual with the condition, the extra digits were rudimentary nubbins and could not be moved. Now here's where things get interesting. One night while drunk, he cut off the extra digit on his right hand using a straight razor. Now, I would say that the removal of this finger nor the addition of the extra finger really didn't have an effect on his playing because he did so to an amazing degree. Now, although he is an electric guitar player, I think he does fall under the classification of an extremely inspirational guitarist and one who had a smile on in almost every picture I've ever seen. Here is Hound Dog Taylor playing slide guitar and doing so in a loud and proud fashion.
Yes, I'm wild about you, baby, but I'm afraid to call your name. Wild about you, baby, but I'm afraid to call your name. I'm in love with you, baby. You in love with me, no, baby. I called you last night. You know I'll call you tonight.
All right, the final guitarist on our list is one who, again, I had never heard of him prior to the show. And once I discovered him, I was floored at the music that he makes. The music that he makes is right up my alley. It's beautiful music. It's beautiful fingerstyle music done on an acoustic guitar. Beautiful compositions, beautiful counterpoint, and just stunning. His name is Andre Godoy. I think I'm saying that right. Andre is the embodiment of determination and true grit. And this is from his website. Overcoming the loss of a limb and continuing to do what he loves the most. In an interview, he said at no point did he ever think of throwing in the towel. He says, "We must always find a way to get past our disabilities. We can't depend on people to help us. We have to do it ourselves." Adding that, he lost his arm at 14 when it got crushed in the machine he was working on within a windmill. And I gotta say, you know, I heard his music and thought, this is stunning, it's beautiful, what a great modern percussive type fingerstyle guitar player. And then I watched video of him play and I was floored that he was doing this with just a single fretting hand. And I am just so happy that he's making music. I'm so happy that he never gave up. I'm so happy that he has the attitude that he does. And I found him to be incredibly inspirational and just bottom line, a masterful musician. So if you've never heard of Andre, you're in for a treat. Here he is playing the song in Cada Segundo, I think is the name of the song. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Here he is. So there you have it, a list of phenomenal guitar players. Let me just go ahead and give you the rundown of the full list. I got to scroll up in my notes here. We have Django Reinhardt, Phil Kagi, Wesley Tuttle. We've got Billy Joe Shaver, Roy Thackerson, the Fingerless Fiddler. We've got Jerry Garcia, Barry Abernathy. Then we have Mac Rebenak, also known as Dr. John. We've got Hound Dog Taylor, and then rounding out our list, Andre Godoy. I am just delighted to have found these musicians. Some were brand new discoveries, some I have known for a long time, but nonetheless, they create amazing music. And again, I just want to reiterate the reason I'm sharing this list with you. I think these are all artists that you can now sink into and really kind of, well, you've learned some new artists. You can go dig into their entire catalogs. In fact, again, if you want to learn more about these artists, please visit acousticlife.tv/AT145. And also I wanted to say that, you know, yes, their stories are inspirational, but bottom line, these are just great musicians at that. And I wanted to reiterate that each of them seemingly has this inner desire to create and make music and share it with people. And I think that is the most inspirational thing. Now, some of us guitar players, some of us have bad days where we don't feel like we can play anything. Some of us have days where we might be battling a physical limitation, where we feel like, gosh, maybe it's an like arthritis flare-up. Maybe it's carpal tunnel syndrome. Maybe you're new to guitar and your fingers are just sore. But one of the things I want you to take from today's episode is tapping into that inner desire to just play, have fun, and make awesome music, to just create. And that alone should drive you forward in your guitar journey. And that alone is something to really celebrate and be passionate about in and of itself. So I want to thank you so much for sticking through today's list of guitar players. We do have one more important item of business, and that, of course, is your Guitar Geek trivia answer. Let me go ahead and reiterate the question in case you forgot what it was. Here's the question. Which of the following guitarists had to overcome damage sustained to their hands or fingers? Was it A, Jim Croce, B, Les Paul, C, Tony Iommi, or D, Bruce Langhorne? If you answered A, Jim Croce, you're correct. Jim Croce accidentally smashed his right index finger in a mishap involving a sledgehammer. Unable to use that very important finger in his guitar playing any longer, he developed a distinctive picking style that involved his other 3 fingers as well as his thumb. If you answered B, Les Paul, you're also correct. Les Paul, after being rushed to the hospital after a car crash, let me go ahead and reread that. Les Paul, after being rushed to the hospital after a car crash, he was told that his right arm may have to be amputated. But Les Paul was determined to keep it and play his guitar again. After several surgeries, Les was flown out to California to see a bone specialist. He was told that he could have his right elbow replaced with a piece of bone from his leg. Though this would save his arm from amputation, he would lose all ability to bend it. He agreed to the procedure and had his doctor set his arm in the position that he plays his guitar. After more than a year of rehabilitation and practice, Les adapted to the change in his arm, regained his ability to play the guitar, and went on to write and perform chart-topping songs with Mary Ford. And yes, if you answered C, Tony Iommi, you're also correct. I think you're getting the trend here. At the age of 17, during his last day of work at a sheet metal factory in his native Birmingham, Tony experienced a horrific industrial accident where the tips of his middle and ring finger on his left hand were severed. Tony melted down plastic liquid soap bottles and molded 2 fingertip-shaped thimbles out of them. He attached pieces of leather to the tips of the thimbles to assist with gripping the strings and used banjo strings at low tunings to further the ease of the playing process. And yes, if you answered D, Bruce Langhorne, you're also correct. Bruce Langhorne was a 60s era folk musician and prolific session guitarist who Bob Dylan said inspired him to write Mr. Tambourine Man. Langhorne grew up in Harlem and was a violin student until he accidentally blew off the tips of several fingers on his right hand when he picked up a cherry bomb just as it exploded. He took the accident in stride, saying, "At least I don't have to play violin anymore." So he picked up the guitar instead and became a go-to session musician in the early 1960s. Pretty fantastic Guitar Geek trivia for you there. I want to thank you for sharing your time with me on today's show. Let's take a quick sneak peek into next week. Next week, we're going to celebrate an artist whose initials match the name of the state in which I live. Yes, MT. Any guesses as to who this is? Go ahead and leave it in the comments below. If you're looking for another hint, again, the initials are MT. If you're looking for another hint, the musician's name that will be the feature of next week's show rhymes with Folly Shuttle. Yes, if you can think of a musician's name who rhymes with Folly Shuttle, you're on the right track. But that, of course, is going to happen next week. Don't forget, you can catch Acoustic Tuesday every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. here on YouTube. And of course, for your Acoustic Tuesday fix in between Tuesdays, simply visit acousticlife.tv, where you can do a deep dive in anything I've ever featured. Again, thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. Thank you for being a guitar geek. And holy smokes, Guitar Geeks unite. Cheers, and I'll see you next Tuesday.